Welcome to Washington Watch with Congressman Walter Jones. Each month, we take a look at the events happening in Washington, D.C. and how they affect our lives here in eastern North Carolina.
Beautiful little horse. It is God's gift to the world. So thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Thank you for...
And now, here's your Congressman, Walter Jones.
Welcome to the August edition of Washington Watch. Today's guest is a lady that I have so much respect for. It's Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, who represents the 6th District of Minnesota. She serves on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Financial Service Committee and has been a consistent voice of support in the effort to cut wasteful spending and limit the scope of government. Congresswoman Bachmann earned her law degree at the law school at Oral Roberts University and her LLM in tax law at the College of William and Mary. Before being elected to Congress, she worked as a tax attorney, a small business owner, and a Minnesota state senator. She and her husband, Marcus, have 5 children and have cared for over 23 foster children. Michele Bachmann, it is an honor and a privilege to have you on this show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Walter, thank you. I know that you have a wonderful audience that tunes into you, and they're very appreciative of your service in Congress, and I'm delighted to be able to be here with you today.
Well, you have been a candidate to become the Republican nominee for the presidency, and I want to tell you that you have so many supporters in my district of Eastern North Carolina and across this nation. And thank you, and all those who challenged for that nomination, for taking on a tough road that I know. Maybe we'll talk about that in a moment. But Michele, you have been outspoken on the immigration issue and especially taken a strong position, and I've joined you along with other of our colleagues on this Senate bill that has passed the Senate. Would you share your feelings about why this is the wrong direction for our nation?
I will. We have a tremendous problem with accumulating debt in this country. I haven't been in the Congress for a long time. It's something like 7 years. And when I came into Congress, this was 2007 of January, we were $8.67 trillion in debt. Today it's over $17 trillion. That is doubling of our national debt. It took us 219 years to accumulate $8.67 trillion in debt, and now we've doubled it. The reason why I'm against amnesty for illegal aliens is this. It will cost the people of your district and my district a fortune, something like an additional $6 trillion. And at the worst possible time, when baby boomers are now starting to draw down on the Social Security benefits and the Medicare benefits that they paid in to receive, at the worst possible time, now we would be bringing in and legalizing literally tens of millions of illegal aliens, and they'd have access to Social Security and Medicare. And so these are systems that are about to go bankrupt. Why in the world would we add people who haven't paid into those systems? I care about America first, American jobs first, American wages first, and American benefits first. And that's why I'm opposed to that bill. Plus, it's fake border security. We will never see our borders secure. That's what the American people are demanding. They're saying, please secure those borders. Until that's done, there's no need to have a conversation about amnesty.
You know, Michele, thank you for those comments, and I couldn't agree more, and I'm sure everyone watching the show agrees with your position on that. Every July the 4th, including this past July the 4th, I've been invited to attend a naturalization ceremony held in Kinston, North Carolina. A federal judge comes down. We have the Marine Color Guard. It's held in the backyard of a house that was built during the Revolutionary War, and that house has been maintained. It's a tourist attraction. But Michele, your point is so well made. When you look at these people, the judge gives me 2 minutes for welcome, and I always say, I am honored to stand before you because you love this country so much that you decided that you wanted to learn our ways. You came here and learned our Constitution. You learned our laws. You learned our language. You are going to make America a better place to live. Then when your point that you just made, these people that have come here illegally and expect to have amnesty. It is just not acceptable.
That's right, because we already have a legal process. In fact, your listeners may not realize that if you take all of the countries of the world and the number of people that they allow in through legal immigration, the United States of America in 1 year allows in more legal immigrants than the rest of the world combined. We bring in over 1 million people every single year, just like the ceremony that you have in your district. We have 4 million people, Walter, that are on waiting lists to come in legally. Why would we choose this subset of people who've broken our law to immediately put them to the front of the line and give them access to not only Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, 80 different welfare means-tested programs, ObamaCare? We can't afford all this. We're broke, as you know.
Absolutely.
And so why would we disadvantage our children and our senior citizens on fixed incomes? Why would we do that? And I won't. I will oppose that with everything that's within me.
Well, I assure you that I will cast my vote with your vote, because I could not agree more with what you just said. It's sad to me that, I mean, you know, our own party right now is talking about a DREAM Act. I mean, I don't want to get into Republican or Democrat, but you know, that in itself, yesterday at the Republican conference, Louis Goma, a friend of ours who agrees with you and myself, and he was saying to, he's from Texas, and he was saying to the leadership yesterday, if you think the DREAM Act is not going to create more problems than you can imagine, then you're wrong. You cannot allow people that were brought here as children or were born here not to want to bring their relatives into this country.
Well, and that's how the DREAM Act works. It's immediate amnesty for the children of illegal aliens. But what age does that go up to? Because people were brought here illegally who are 65 years of age. So are we going to let people through all of the span of life who came into this country illegally be granted that status? And just consider the largest subset of illegal aliens are the children of illegal aliens. Once they're granted amnesty, do you know they have the immediate right to request that their parents be also given legalization, and their grandparents and their aunts and uncles? It isn't just one child. Through chain migration, they can bring 18 more people into the country with them. So we aren't talking just 10 million people. We're talking tens of millions of people who are coming in illegally. I think that the United States citizens, our taxpayers, should have the right to say who comes in and who doesn't come in, and when they come in, because we have 22 million people today in this country that can't find a full-time job. Now, why would we put the stress on American citizens who don't have a full-time job and instead bring in all this competition from people who are coming in as illegal aliens? We need to think again about Americans first, American jobs first, American wages first, American benefits first, and seal that border. Reagan promised us 27 years ago we would see that border sealed. The Republicans passed a bill in 2006 to build a fence, and they paid for it. Well, where's the fence? I either want the fence or I want my money back. It's one of the two.
Right.
So why do we think why do we believe Barack Obama, who doesn't want a fence, who said he doesn't want to secure a border? We're going to believe him that we're going to get a secure border? It's never going to happen. Don't fall for it.
No, you articulated that so well, because that is exactly why I hope that those of us, Steve King and so many more, I don't want to just start naming one or two, and yourself have been so much of the spokesman for those of us who believe sincerely that we need to follow the law of the land and not make exceptions for people who have violated the law so they can become American citizens. You know, you mentioned President Obama. Brought me now to another issue that you have been very outspoken on nationally during your campaign as well, and that's the Affordable Care Act, or ObamaCare. Michele, I don't know how in the world it could even be implemented. I don't know how it could be paid for. And I don't think we have seen the end of it yet. What I'm talking about is the true cost of what this, it would bankrupt America, in my opinion. Would you elaborate on that?
No, you're exactly right. And the main thing people need to know about Obamacare, Walter, is that we're all going to pay a lot more money and we're all going to get a lot less health care. People are already being denied health care. And we saw that President Obama has admitted that this is a disaster because he had to put off for big business some of the requirements. But the fact is, even the individual mandate where we're all forced to go out and buy health insurance policies we can't afford and we don't want, or we pay out thousands and thousands of dollars in a fine, what a cruel government that is. They're going to force us to pay fines and we can't even afford to buy health care. The best thing we could do is bring down the cost of health care. You see, the one thing that the president doesn't talk about anymore is the cost, because his Obamacare is jacking the price up, because you see over 30 million Americans are going to be given taxpayer subsidized health care, but that doesn't include the illegal aliens. The illegal aliens, tens of millions, will be getting the free to them, but very expensive to us health care. So what's going to happen? American citizens are going to go farther back in the line to get a doctor appointment. We're going to be paying a lot more money, and we're going to get a lot less in coverage. And I think people are going to be hurt. I think people will probably die because of denial of coverage. As a matter of fact, there's one provision that came out because of Obamacare that said that hospitals would be fined depending upon the number of hip replacements, knee replacements, cataract surgeries. So the federal government doesn't want hospitals to do those. They'll be given a quota and they'll have to cut back. Well, tell that to your constituent who needs a hip replacement, a shoulder replacement, whatever that procedure is. You see, this is cruel. This is cruel what we're walking into, and that's why I think eventually the American people are going to stand with us. They don't like Obamacare now. The president's approval ratings are falling through the basement, and it's because Americans are realizing now it's going to touch them. Now it means they're going to lose their advantages in the finest healthcare system the world has ever known. We're quickly turning overnight into third world healthcare. And we need to fight that, and I know you are, and I thank you for the work you're doing to fight it,
Michele,
Walter.
thank you for that comment and explanation to those people in my district, because you're exactly right. People are just beginning to understand the devastation that's coming from Obamacare. And I hope we in the Congress, I think we voted 37, 38 times to repeal Obamacare. We've been criticized.
And that's my bill.
Right.
That's my bill to repeal Obamacare.
Well, I was going to say that, and thank you for the bill. I mean, we've been criticized for it by the press, but the press will not listen to the people who appreciate us trying to repeal it.
That's right.
And I thank you again for taking the lead.
Can I tell you about some of the corruption that's happening right now? There's an effort to sign people up for Obamacare. And do you know that our government will pay people $58 per person to sign people up? So Planned Parenthood, ACORN, and the President's campaign organization, it's called OFA, Organizing for America. Those people that are allies of the President, they're going to get $58 for every person they sign up. And there's no verification. You're going to see massive fraud. Can you imagine? They'll go down to homeless shelters, wherever they're going to go, and they'll say, sign up here, and they'll get $58 a person, and we're paying for that? And it's going to be fraud, 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 because the president's already announced you don't even have to prove that your application is true, because he just wants people on the system. Because I probably shouldn't use this analogy, but it's like crack cocaine. You addict someone to government handouts, and you cannot get off that addiction. And that's the president's goal, because he sees that this program will never get away once he gets people addicted to more free stuff. Well, the problem is, like you mentioned at the beginning, we don't have the money. So we're being cruel to our own children who have to pay for these fraudulent, wasteful, bloated programs.
You know, Michele, again, you were a national candidate, and you might be in the future, but quite frankly, the American people, I think, are so frustrated and fed up with the White House that you just mentioned, but also Congress.
Yes.
Today, in driving into work before this show, I was listening, and I think that the Congress now has dropped below 20%. It's somewhere around 17 to 18%. And it does, in my opinion, the frustration, some of the issues that you've talked about today. I want to go back because I'm like you. I think that Obamacare is going to sink under its own problems in time. I really do, because it's just not. It's not going to survive. I don't know how it can financially. And then the mechanics of it, as you've already explained very well, it just doesn't work. It just does not work. But I want to go back in the few minutes we have left to talk about when you came to Congress. We have double the debt of this nation. Mm-hmm. I want to talk briefly and get your ideas about the debt ceiling increase that's going to be debated probably in September, October.
Well, I'm against raising the debt ceiling. What that does is allow the federal government and the Congress to keep adding to our credit card. So if your credit card is completely maxed out and you can't spend anymore, you're kind of done on your own. Congress has maxed out our national credit card, but we want to keep going deeper in debt. I'm totally opposed to that. I think what we have to do is have our day of reckoning now, because it's very simple. I come from a very modest means family, and you don't spend more money than what you take in. And that's been the problem in Washington. And so what we have to do is just say no. We are not raising the debt ceiling. We're only going to spend what we have. We're going to reform these programs right now. What are we waiting for? These programs, these ridiculous things that money gets wasted on and spent on, everything from foreign aid to domestic programs. We just say today we can't do it, and we do what we were sent here to do. We all get in a room and we each take a piece of this puzzle and we say, this is how much we have to cut. Let's figure out how we're going to do it. It's a shared sacrifice, but America can do it. And if we don't, what we're doing is we're all going to turn into, unfortunately, a failed city like Detroit. Do you know that Detroit, Michigan, had the highest per capita income in the United States, of any city in the United States? Detroit had the highest income in 1960. 53 years later, sadly, the people that are left in that city, it looks like a burned out version of Berlin in 1945. And it's because it's a city that decided to ignore reality, and they kept spending money that they didn't have. That shouldn't be the future of America. That shouldn't be the future of any other city. And what person in their right mind would spend money that they don't have? Because I can't think of anything more immoral to do to the next generation. Your parents and my parents wanted better for us than they did for themselves, and so they sacrificed. They sacrificed so they wouldn't hand you debt or me debt. Why in the world are we so selfish that we're consuming more than what we're taking in? And that's the future we're leaving for our children. I don't want our children to have that future.
Well, Michele, I am. That's one reason I don't vote for foreign aid bills, and one reason I'm trying to get our troops out of Afghanistan. I don't know why we feel like we've got to prop up other nations when we can't even fix the roads, the streets, or the sewer systems in our own areas. And I really think, truthfully, that it's, I guess, the American people and their frustration. You know, we had a rally up here dealing with the immigration issue. We need to have more rallies up here to stop foreign aid, to stop spending money overseas, and bring some of that money back here, if we have any, bring it back to fix the infrastructure of America. I've got about a minute left, and I want to know if maybe you could just say to the people of my district, not about me, but you're an American citizen, help us rebuild America. I'll let you get
Well, we need you to rebuild America, and I've been to the Outer Banks area many times. My brother has a home there. It's one of the most beautiful natural areas in the United States for birds and fish and wildlife. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the values that people in the Outer Banks and extended area hold are ones of hard work. Hard work and loving our families, and we all know what America stands for. What's very different is that it seems that today we're embracing the values of third world nations, failed nations. That's not who we are. That's not our identity. And one thing that we know is that the Constitution has served us very well. The Declaration of Independence has served us very well. Our men and women in uniform have served us very well. We can't undercut them. And so I'm for them. I'm for the people in your district as well as my own. But more than anything, I'm for these values that have lifted up not just America, but the world. When America is strong, the world's a better place. That's where we want to be.
Michele, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I think the people of the 3rd District of North Carolina are going to be so impressed. You are a great leader of our country, and I want to thank you again for being on this show and what you do for not only your district in Minnesota, but for America. And ladies and gentlemen, in about 1 minute, we're going to have Glenn Downs, my Chief of Staff, to come on to talk about some issues that really are important to you in the 3rd District of North Carolina. Again, thank you, Michele Bachmann.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the second part of the August Washington Watch show. And Glenn, glad to have you on after having Congresswoman Bachmann.
Thank you very much for having me back. And I wanted to ask you a few questions that contain sentiments that have been expressed to your office in Greenville and here in Washington, D.C. about some of the issues, frankly, you and Ms. Bachmann just talked about. And one is that issue of frustration. Boy, an awful lot of people in eastern North Carolina seem to be frustrated. They convey that, hey, it doesn't matter. They feel like sometimes it doesn't matter how much they study up on an issue and they get themselves informed on the issues of the day, that people in Washington just aren't listening. And is that something that you've heard? And what are your thoughts on that?
Glenn, absolutely. Part of my frustration of listening to the people in the 3rd District when I go home every weekend, and those who call the office, some of them, as you said, you've talked to, they are frustrated because they don't understand why Washington keeps spending all this money. We got all this money going, roughly $8 billion a month going to Afghanistan. We seem to always want to be involved in foreign countries and their problems instead of worrying about eastern North Carolina or Minnesota or anywhere across the United States. We need to start thinking about how do we rebuild America, and don't worry about rebuilding the rest of the world.
You talked about the issue of spending money overseas. Take the Afghanistan issue, for example. At the same time, you have sequestration here in the United States. So you see money being spent on military operations there at the same time, say people that work at Cherry Point or Camp Lejeune are being furloughed or being partially furloughed. Can you explain, people don't understand the process, can you explain how it is that those kinds of decisions are made? How is it that the leadership of both parties don't allow votes or amendments to come to the floor where you can say, hey, I want to not spend money there, I want to spend it here instead? Why is it that the official Washington, the Washington establishment, wants to keep doing what's being done, and why are they blocking other efforts to more rationally spend those kinds of monies?
Glenn, first on the furloughs and sequestration, I want to again restate that the bill that created sequestration, I did not vote for that bill because I was concerned about going into sequestration because there is no controls. It's automatic cuts across the agencies. To me, members of Congress ought to be willing to make the tough decisions. Let's make the tough budget decisions and then try to explain it to the people we represent. The way I've watched it lately with some of these appropriations bills, it seems like that once you have approved spending here, if you want to change it, it's very difficult to do. It's almost like it's in the pipeline. And this goes back to both parties. I'm glad you said it that way. I do not understand why my party wants to keep funding the war in Afghanistan. It is not, Afghanistan will never change. Every expert I've ever talked to, every historian I've ever talked to said no country from Alexander the Great to the Brits to the Russians will ever change Afghanistan. We need to change the debate in Washington, and I'm working with other colleagues, some in the other party, to try to change that debate because we keep doing the same thing time after time, and that was your point.
Well, you and Ms. Bachmann talked about the debt ceiling, and that's one way that Washington's been able to keep doing what it's been doing is it's been able to borrow more money to just keep doing what it's doing, and I guess hope things get better on their own. When you come back from the August recess, the August district work period, and some people go overseas and you always go to eastern North Carolina.
Thank you.
But when you come back, when Congress comes back in, that's going to be one of the first issues that gets dealt with is the U.S. is already at the debt ceiling and they're playing games, borrowing against trust funds and things like that to keep things going. But that latest day of reckoning will be forthcoming. How do you see that playing out?
Well, Glenn, thank you for bringing that up because Michele Bachmann made the statement that I'm going to make. I'm not voting to raise the debt ceiling. All that does is to allow an administration, and it happened under President George Bush, by the way. Every year that he was in office, there was always a bill on the floor to raise the debt ceiling. And all that does, in my opinion, is to let a government continue to borrow more money, and we never deal with the problem. We put it off. We put it off and allow the debt to get larger and to strangle our grandchildren's future. That's exactly what we're doing.
Just to follow up briefly, in the last debt ceiling showdown, Republicans agreed to go along with the debt ceiling increase in return for a provision they called no budget, no pay, which said, if because the problem was Washington hadn't produced a budget for years and just was spending money on autopilot. So now, no budget, no pay didn't really have anything to do with controlling the level of spending. It just said you have to plan to overspend. What do you think will be the mechanism, what's your best guess, the mechanism that the leadership around here will try to use to round up votes and get that debt ceiling increased?
I think it's going to, whatever the White House and the leadership of the House and Senate come out with any type of an agreement, or the leadership might say that we want the president to give on this or that, you cannot, in my opinion, sweeten the coffee enough to make it not be bitter. It's going to be bitter to raise the debt ceiling. I am not going to do that to the families and the children that live in the 3rd District of North Carolina. I'm not going to do that to the people of America. It's the wrong thing to do. Glenn, with that, again, as it goes so fast, we will have just about 20 seconds. I want to thank you first for all the good you do for the people of the 3rd District, that little office in Greenville, all the good they do for the people of the 3rd District. And I want to close by saying we still have young men and women in Afghanistan. Let's not forget to pray for them. Thank you for taking the time to watch this show today. Have a great August. Be careful, be safe, and God, please bless America.